The New Mexico Veterans Memorial presents Heroes at a Glimpse, an online video series intended to capture and honor service members, those who've already served and those currently serving. Interviews are conducted by Airman First Class Romero, a local airman stationed at Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico. The purpose of these interviews are to capture local heroes, those service members that call Albuquerque and New Mexico home.
I'm A1C Romero. This is retired Chief Master Sergeant Patrick Mcfarlin, Master Sergeant Michael Bird on the camera. We'll be doing an interview today. So, sir, can you tell me when you joined the Air Force?
I started my Air Force career on 23 September 1988. Several months prior to that, I entered the delayed entry program. This is all out of Las Vegas, Nevada. I retired on 1 September 2017. But I actually retired out of Ramstein Air Force Base and had my retirement ceremony here at Kirtland because I wanted my family and friends to be able to attend.
Okay. Do you remember your last day on active duty?
I don't. Because of retiring out of Ramstein Air Base and having my ceremony here, I actually started working my very first day of terminal leave.
Okay, so there wasn't really much of a break in between working and active duty service?
There was no break. My wife was like, I love you, but get to work. Looking back, do I regret that decision? A little bit. Honestly, any retirees going from the military into civilian life, I definitely recommend taking some time to decompress. My regret is not being able to go up north and see my stepfather and my father. Should have taken a few weeks. Mm-hmm. Did a road trip.
I'm sure since then you've been able to go home though, correct?
Oh yes.
Yeah, okay, well that's good to hear. At least you didn't completely lose touch.
No,
Definitely.
no, not at all. No, family's forever.
Of course.
Your military career is not.
No, that's very true. So what made you join the Air Force as opposed to any of the other branches?
Originally, I wasn't going to join the Air Force. I was going to join the Navy.
Okay.
I went to a vocational high school in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's called Southern Nevada Vocational Technical Center. And I was a carpentry student, 6 hours a day. When I wanted to join the Navy, they weren't hiring for Seabees, and the Air Force was. My family has a lineage of serving. My grandfather couldn't serve World War II because he was blind in one eye, but my uncle was Marine Corps for 4 years. My father was Navy for 4 years off the coast of Vietnam on a ship. I think it was a USS Bonhomme Richard off the coast of Vietnam. The running joke in the family though is my father got out as an E4, my uncle got out as an E4, and then me retired as an Air Force chief. I outrank them both combined. But my stepfather was the Walter Eldridge Watts. Walt was one of the main reasons I joined the Air Force. He was a pararescue in Nam. Yeah, he's a tough guy.
Sounds like it.
He's almost 80 years old, and I still don't mess with him. But then when they split off the career field, he became SEER. Survive, evade, resist, escape specialist. For a while, he was the head of the POW camp up at Fairchild. That's another reason I don't mess with Walt.
Yeah, he's a tough guy.
Yeah, he's a tough guy. So actually, a recipient of the Airman's Medal.
Oh.
Yeah, he went to a burning aircraft to try to save folks. So, yeah, he's one of the main reasons I decided to join.
Now, did you want to go into this? Like, did you want to follow his footsteps and do the same career field, anything like that?
No, had real no desire to become a pararescueman.
Okay.
Um, Originally, I put in to be air traffic control. It happened, but going through tech school, I realized it wasn't for me. So back then, in the late '80s, they had a direct duty on the job training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like you coming as an A1C coming out of tech school, you may almost have enough credits for your CCF degree.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had 3-level CDCs, which are career development courses, which I got 4 hours for. So for me, I had to take a whole lot of classes to get my education.
Oh wow.
But yeah, I went direct duty OJT to Ellsworth Air Force Base,
Okay.
South
And then,
Dakota.
what was your job?
It's aviation resource management.
And was that something you were happy with?
Being that I grew up in Las Vegas and they stationed me in South Dakota, at the time, no. But I actually learned to love it. When I retired from the Air Force, the cool thing is I retired as a MAGCOM functional manager.
Okay.
The funny thing about that is years before this, my best friend told me, he's like, and he's reminded me since then, to this day, he goes, Patrick, because I told him years ago as a first sergeant, I said I will never, ever come back into this career field. And he keeps reminding me that, hey, I said, Al, I'd take an Adam Vinatieri kick to the groin, then come back into this career field. And my best friend Al Perez is a senior master sergeant retired, aviation resource management person also. He reminds me that he's like, hey, Adam's looking for you. He's got a kick for you. But honestly, when I retired, it was the best job in the Air Force. And why do I say that is because I've been married 29 years. She hasn't traded me in yet. Yes, I was first sergeant of the year in 2 different wings at Edwards, but it was at the expense of my family. When your son tells your daughter, hey Zoe, Dad can't come to your function today because work's too important, I was done being a first sergeant. I loved it. I was very good at it, but it takes a toll. And being a command chief would have taken a huge toll on my family. Because you have no off time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't.
So how long were you a first sergeant?
Just shy of 3 years.
Okay.
And ironically, I deployed twice as a first sergeant. First time was Al Dafra, which I refer to as Club Med Number 2. Al Udeed is Club Med Number 1. And then I deployed as a first sergeant to Fort Riley, Kansas. And people go, that's not a deployment. And I tell them to shut their mouth. Why? Because we had 335 people on the ground at Fort Riley.
Wow.
Anything from like 45 to 50 A1Cs to 6 or 7 full-blood colonels.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was, being that there was only one first sergeant, from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you're pretty busy.
No, I can definitely believe that.
Yeah, and there's an airport right there. It's in Manhattan, Kansas, but if an emergency situation comes into play, you're getting up at 3 a.m. to take Airman Smith or Airman Snuffy all the way to Kansas City International. You're driving with them, talking to them about the situation, but then you're driving back by yourself. So it was a good time. You definitely got to make the difference. The thing that I liked about being at Fort Riley is the Army's blunt, tells us it like it is. If the baby's ugly, they're going to call it ugly. The other good thing is the people before us, they put the foundation with the Army, but then we built the walls, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to get a lot of good things done.
Okay. What was your favorite part about being a first sergeant? Because it's a tough job.
It is. My favorite part and the worst part. The worst part is I should have been a master sergeant a bit longer, because I pinned on master sergeant, and 3 months later I became a first sergeant. I should have been a master sergeant a bit longer, and the reason I say what I'm saying is because I would get only half the information. I would get, you as an example, you're now Airman Snuffy. I would only get Airman Snuffy's side of the story before I rolled in on a situation. That was being a junior first sergeant. Now in later days, I want to get all sides of the situation before I roll in on to help with somebody. But that was the best part is as a diamond, or even as a chief. The nice thing is you walk into an office, you immediately get attention for your subordinates. The first sergeant motto is people are our business. Absolutely loved it. steered me on a path to get my master's degree in human relations. And even to this day, I still love taking care of people. Even to this day, for me, my passion is, and people even question my wife, why does Patrick do what he does? For me, it's about taking care of people.
Mm-hmm. Which is what you become so accustomed to, being a first sergeant, being a chief. It's kind of what you do, so it kind of makes sense that it sticks with you.
It does, but I will say most. I will not say all.
True.
You know, I hate to use the comic book, but with great power comes great responsibility, and some people forget about that. There are too many, in my personal and professional opinion, there's too many E7s, E8s, and E9s in the Air Force. They should be senior master sergeants. They should, or seniors now, chiefs and master sergeants. They need to take care of the people.
Of course.
Right now, you've got Air Force is standing down. 78 suicides this year?
Yeah, just this year. I believe it's like, it was a huge number, huge increase between last year. I think the number was, the percentage was like 300% more or something like that, something ridiculous. It was some ridiculous number.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I couldn't believe it.
And I'm not blaming current Air Force leadership, but you talk to any of the former Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force, and they'll tell you, every single one of them will tell you, you've got to take care of your people. You've got to know your people. I jokingly tell your generation, I'm like DJ Khaled. All I do is win, win, win. I don't win, but my folks win everything. Even this local AFSA chapter here at Kirtland Air Force Base, we as a team got together, had a plan. I called it the Wreck-'em Ralph plan. I actually gave the local chapter a Wreck-'em Ralph that Ramstein gave me, and I presented it. And I said, our plan going into this year is to wreck the rest of the division. And we took 7 of 11 awards at the division conference this year.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It's about taking care of folks.
It is.
And then hopefully here, I think it's later this month, is the international, isn't it, Michael?
It is.
It is. So hopefully we get several I'm hoping we get a few.
I think we will, yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to jump into something a little bit touchier.
Okay.
You were in the area for the 1996 Khobar Towers bombing. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Not a problem. Okay. In late June in 1996, terrorists drove a truck about 110 feet, and I believe it's building 132. They parked this truck, jumped out of the vehicle, and ran. A defender, a cop, staff sergeant, and I don't remember his last name. It might have been Martinez. I'm not sure, but I know he was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base at the time. Started putting the sound out, meaning getting on the radio, making phone calls, saying, hey, there's something going on. Somebody just parked a truck. We need to start evacuating people. Because there had been chatter about haste that something may happen. About 3 or 4 minutes later, I hate to use the bad word, but it was a shit truck. It was a truck full of feces. Mm-hmm. There was a 5,000 to 10,000 pound explosive device put on that truck. It blew up. That night, 19 airmen were killed, and about 300 to 400 injured. Why were most people injured? Because of flying glass. If you research Khobar Towers, you'll see that the towers, there are lots of windows, lots of doors on the outside for the balconies. On the balconies, that's where a lot of people got hurt, is flying glass. Myself, knock on wood or however you want to put it, thank God, I was in the gym when it happened. Ironically, it was doing what I'm doing now. I was talking to my coworkers. I was about to go out for a run, and I'm glad I didn't, because one of the people that was killed was basically probably blown from here to 40 feet away into an underground garage and instantly killed. There were people that were killed by air conditioners coming through the wall. I was in the gym when it hit, and basically I thought the roof was going to come down. Every mirror in the gym shattered. Myself, Jason Albert, and one other individual immediately came out of the gym, and we ran across 2 people that were hurt. So what we did is we proceeded to take those 2 young ladies to the hospital. From then on, we proceeded to help wherever we could. If it was moving water to the hospital, I was one of the few, like 13 or 14 people that volunteered to move the dead. because there were also people that died of injuries downtown. But yeah, approximately 400 plus people were hurt, mainly by flying glass. It was a tragedy, but several good things came out of this tragedy. Every single person that was hurt was taken to the hospital by a buddy. You know, for years I was a self-aid buddy care instructor. It just kicks in. You know, I talked about Edwards Air Force Base and being a first sergeant. We had exercises. Walk into a situation, all these people are hurt. It's an exercise, but instinct takes over. You help people. Self-aid buddy care worked. On another instance, as a young staff sergeant out at Edwards Air Force Base, I put in a suggestion. I wanted us to rename our annual award after one of the Charlie Oscars. That was my career field, aviation resource management. Before that, it was 271. But I wanted us as a career field to rename our annual award after Sergeant. He was the only buck sergeant. That's way, way before your time. It's a history lesson there. We had individuals that were E4 buck sergeants. That on the old stripes, you had 3 stripes and then the star. Mm-hmm. And normally it was a time thing. But he was the only buck sergeant killed that night. This award, as a staff sergeant, I put in the suggestion. It went nowhere. A few years later, I went back to Edwards on my second assignment at Edwards and as a first sergeant. And I worked through, ironically, he's now my best friend, Albert Perez. But what we got is some traction behind it is we put together a staff summary sheet, put the suggestion up. It went to the career field as a whole. Mm-hmm. I think the career field as a whole wanted to do it, but then when it got to my career field is aviation resource management, ARMS. When it got to the ARMS steering group, the chiefs got into an argument. So what they ended up doing is they decided to name the team award. So we have a large unit and small unit after D.
Okay.
And I won't say that I'm solely responsible. My best friend had a part in it. He hit up the Air Force Material Command MAGCOM Functional, who served with D. I will say all the planets aligned, so to speak, to make this happen. As a first sergeant at Edwards, working through my best friend, working through the MAGCOM Functional, we got this approved. Kind of neat, though, is a few years later on Facebook, because there's a Facebook for Cobar Towers, and I didn't know this, but Dee's parents did not know what we did. So talking to them through Facebook, they knew that we recognized their sons, or their son, and will continue to recognize their son.
It's a nice way to honor him.
It is. It is. It's pretty neat. Like I said, there were some bad things that came out of Cobar Towers, but there were some good things. And being a small Air Force, like I said, big changes came out of the Air Force. So years ago, in the security, you've only known security forces. Well, it used to be I was a law enforcement guy, and you were security police. And you would only do security, and I would only do law enforcement. Well, another thing that came out of Cobar Towers is the security forces career field became a security forces career field. When I talk to young men and women at the gate, I'll talk to them and I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of Cobar Towers? Yeah, they teach us that in tech school. Well, I'm a survivor. They're like, wow, you're old. I love you, airmen. You guys are awesome. But no, I'll talk to them. No, I knew it was time to retire when the young one's like, you were like, Chief, what are those ribbons? Oh. And I go, oh, that's Desert Shield and Storm. And I get, my dad. Yeah, okay, it's time to retire. But out of that night, I received an Air Force Achievement Medal with Valor for heroism. Anytime I wear my service dress, I get questioned because I'll get, why do you have a V on your achievement medal? I've never seen that before, and that was because of Cobar Towers. I'll give you one other story about Cobar. Is I sat down like I'm sitting with you here today with the USAFE Command Chief, James Davis, JD, and I said, JD, I said, in the last year, how many times have you gotten a sexual assault email? He goes, wow, probably 100. And I said, well, how many times in the last year have you got a suicide awareness? Probably 50. Well, how many emails in the last year have you gotten on PTSD? None. 0. Michael, you're sitting in the room. How many emails have you gotten in the last year on PTSD?
Countless, Chief. Honestly, countless.
Countless. You've got a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Good.
Same.
Good.
I see them all the time.
But coming up in my Air Force career, and until recently, it wasn't brought up. When I brought this up to JD a few years ago on PTSD, he goes 0. So what he allowed me to do is speak in front of all the enlisted on the headquarters youth safety staff. And ironically, I had just fractured a collarbone and separated a shoulder, so I'm sitting there like this with a microphone with a messed up shoulder briefing all the enlisted on the headquarters youth safety staff. And I use the same story as far as how many times. I hate to say it's a dirty little secret, but I think we as an Air Force, we as branches are now, it's not a dirty little secret anymore. Did I get help while I was in active duty? I did. Was it a Band-Aid? It was. Because my wife's like, I love you, but you need to get help. I've talked to many spouses on this subject, and I'll ask, hey, do you have a 2-story house? Well, yeah. Does he go upstairs and isolate himself at weird times? Yeah. When you're at the mall, does he when it's too many people, he get uncomfortable? Yeah. Does he trigger from sounds? Like for me, because of the bombing, I would trigger because of sounds, and I'd turn as white as this sheet of paper here. What didn't help me is right after I survived Cobra Towers, I became an Air Force flight attendant out at Edwards Air Force Base, flying around on the Chief of Staff's plane. What didn't help is at Edwards, Mike will tell you, as being somebody who was stationed there for like 7.5 years, or 7+ years or so, kind of like me, is they break the sound barrier all the time. So going from Cobra Towers to a year later, constantly being triggered by, sonic booms didn't help. I'll also tell you, I received help while active duty. I've received a lot more help since I retired here at the local VA here in New Mexico, in Albuquerque. And my counselor was absolutely awesome. But I will tell you, she was awesome because she started having me talk about things that I hadn't talked about before. One thing I noticed that when I was stationed at Spangalum is I would trigger all the time. Why would I trigger all the time? Is because right next to the OSS, a short distance away, was a fence. That fence looked a lot like it was at Cobra Towers, and that fence was too close to the building. My opinion is somebody had to just pull a pin on a grenade, lob it at the OSS, and everybody in the OSS would be taken out. But my counselor's point was, how many times did somebody do that? Well, none. How many times has somebody, bombed the mall? She had, the brain's a wonderful thing. You just have to work it and trigger it to do other things. But, yeah, like I said, some great things came out of Cobra Towers. Some bad things come out of Cobra Towers. The last thing I'll say on Cobra Towers is I'm one of several people who, in remembrance of all these people that died that night, originally I was going to get a tattoo that said 19 gone and not forgotten. But what I decided to do is on my left calf, I have freedom is not free, which I think fits it much better.
That's a saying I hear a lot, and it's really powerful.
It is. I agree. But yeah, the biggest thing I'll tell everybody watching is if you need to get help, please. If you talk to somebody, talk to a friend, a spouse, a mentor, the VA, the medical group. Knowledge is power. And I'll repeat that. What I'm asking everybody who's watching this today is get help. Talk to your spouse, your friend, your mentor, medical professionals, be it VA or active duty. Years ago when I was a senior here, I was told, senior, you better not go talk to mental health. Now it's life skills. But I was told you better not go talk to mental health. One of the things I briefed the headquarters youth safety is, folks, I said, what rank do you see on there? Well, you're a chief. I said, yeah. And I got help for my PTSD as a senior master sergeant here today. All right, so I said, let me say that again. I'm sitting here today with chief on my sleeve, but I got help as a senior master sergeant, and I'm sitting here today as a chief. The misnomer, if I go get help, it's going to end my Air Force career is just wrong.
And that's some stigma that we still hear today.
Yes, sir.
And how did you overcome that stigma? What was it for you?
Oh, I got told.
Okay.
I've been married 29 years.
So it was the wife then?
The wife was
Okay.
like, but it wasn't the wife after I retired that said, because I knew I needed additional help. I needed to see somebody's, because I was triggering more than I had before in the past, and I knew I needed some help. And the folks who haven't, I can't say the folks who have never went through it don't know what you need to do. PTSD is people trigger differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be, the way I describe Kobar Towers to a civilian here in Albuquerque is, we're sitting in the Veterans Memorial right now. We're sitting in the library. So say the Veterans Memorial got hit by terrorists. By the terrorists that hit us at Kobar Towers. The way I describe the bombing to them is, the Veterans Memorial got hit here. They heard it in Santa Fe. That's how loud that bombing was. For me, that's why my trigger was sound. The fence at Spangalum was my trigger. How did I come to this realization? It was sitting down and getting help. You gotta get help.
Definitely. And that's actually the field I work in. I'm currently in mental health, and so one of the things we like to brief the units is it's okay to get help. It's okay to talk to somebody. Like you're saying, it's not going to end your Air Force career. That's something that needs to go away. You know, it's a stigma that needs to be gone.
Well, and when I was getting ready to retire, I did not know this. Your life skills records are not your medical records.
No, sir.
So what people watching today need to understand is, say you're going to retire, say you've been something has happened and you've gotten help. You are responsible to get with, like, and that's what I did. As a chief over at Ramstein was talking to you guys here, ironically your office here, saying, hey, I was seen from here to here. Can I get that paperwork because I want to file my PTSD with the VA?
Mm-hmm.
Will I honestly tell you I respectfully agree to disagree with the VA? I will. The VA caused what I have, causation-driven anxiety.
Okay.
Something bad happened, it caused me anxiety. Do I have the full-blown PTSD? Well, probably not. I don't do drugs, I don't abuse my spouse, I don't have night terrors. But this happened in 1996. But for anybody who's went through stuff, Vietnam vets, my stepdad, Walt's best friend, got his head blown off on him. It took him years and years to get over it. My wife has a family member to this day, you know, I know he was Agent Orange, but in Thailand. Well, the records out there now say Thailand got hit with Agent Orange, but to this day he refuses to get help. And I won't say names or anything, but I've talked to his wife and she knows what's going on. He's got PTSD, but he just refuses to get help. And until you're ready, you're not going to get help.
Of course, you can't force somebody to get help.
No.
Because
you can try. It's not going to go well.
Exactly, it won't work.
Exactly.
They'll just sit there and not take the tips or the tools, or they won't talk it through with the provider.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're there because they have to be there.
Mm-hmm. Not because they want to be.
Correct.
But one day they will. You know.
Well, even Kobar Towers, another good thing that they did is they sent a team from Ramstein Air Base of mental health professionals, and we sat down for everybody. Because basically, Kobar got hit at probably about 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, really, like anybody got any sleep that night. Also, all your windows were all blown out. So, the air-conditioned room that you're normally used to having really isn't air-conditioned. They also moved everybody out of that tower, so it got real cramped real quick. Before it happened, I loved Kobar Towers because I have approximately about a year of my life in tents. For Desert Shield and Storm, for Provide Comfort, Deny Flight, and then I was at Southern Watch when Kobar got hit. But yeah, Kobar's the dormitories, like I said, were just phenomenal.
Yeah, so it was at one point a nice upgrade from the tents.
Yes, very much so.
Definitely.
But shortly after that, because of the terrorist bombing, about a year later-ish, they moved everybody to Prince Sultan Air Base, PSAB, Saudi Arabia. And then eventually the Air Force moved everybody from PSAB, got pretty much almost everybody out of Saudi Arabia, and had them go to Al Udeid.
So, Chief, I just want to say thank you for just sitting down with us and talking about this. I know it's not something that's super easy to talk about for anybody. The last thing I want to talk to you about is what advice do you have for active duty members or newly retired veterans or just veterans in general who want to get involved in the community?
Find your passion and go for it.
Okay.
My passion when I retired, going into retirement, I was going to be the next city councilor of District 2 in the city of Rio Rancho. I love being married. The last 14 years of my Air Force career, be it as a first sergeant, a senior, or a chief, I lived in a glass house. My wife's like, babe, I love you, but I don't want to live in a glass house. And as we can see in today's culture, politics are ugly, and I've seen it firsthand. I was a treasurer for somebody running for mayor in Rio Rancho, and they said, hey, we're not going to go ugly, and it went ugly. But find whatever you're passionate about. After I was the treasurer for a mayoral campaign, I got involved in our local Air Force Sergeants Association chapter, which I was a senior advisor at Ramstein. I also became a senior advisor here. And we did well. Like I said, 7 of 11 major awards. Find what you're passionate about and go for it. If it could be the Veterans Memorial here, they're always looking for help. It could be the Veterans Integration Center. AFSA does a thing called Red, White, Blues, and Brews. It could be VFW. It could be American Legion. Find out what you're passionate about and go for it. You never know. Life is funny. You never know what twists and turns and why things happened or didn't happen. You may want this job, and it may not work out. But in the long run, you figure out, oh, that's why this didn't happen. Am I looking for my next adventure? I am. As far as what, I wanted to take this AFSA chapter with the president, the vice president, and the help of the local folks, take it to the next level. And we've done that. But find out what you're passionate about and go for it. Maybe it's your kids. I have 2 kids. They're both adults, but when they were growing up, because I was gone so much, I made it a point to be like an assistant coach and whatever. I don't want to be head coach. I don't have the temperament for it. With a name like Patrick Eugene Mcfarlin, I'm a wee bit Scottish, and I've got that Scottish temper. That's why I couldn't be a head coach. I'd be like Bob Knight throwing chairs. So I could not be a head coach. That's why I've always been an assistant coach. But be there for your kids. My son is 25, and one of the things my wife let me do, which was awesome, is he went away to school. He went to Eastern New Mexico University. He's a Greyhound. But I was able to drive my son off to college, which was pretty cool. But find out whatever your passion is and go for it. To this day, my wife works with an individual who, like me, is a retired E9. And he's like, why is Patrick still doing what he's doing? Well, because that's his passion. My passion is still taking care of people. Be it through the Air Force, be it through Air Force Sergeants Association, helping here at the Veterans Memorial, whatever it is. Me and my AFSA team came out on was it Memorial Day earlier this year or Veterans Day? Which one happened first?
Memorial Day.
It was Memorial. It was the ones who passed. So earlier this year, we came out for Memorial Day. Well, we originally were only just going to come to the Veterans Memorial to do parking. Well, we ended up setting up all the flags, taking most of the flags down. So, like I said, find what you're passionate about and go for it.
I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Chief. I really appreciate that.
Appreciate the time.